The Battle of Adwa, Ethiopia's triumph over colonialism. In the late 19th century, Africa was being carved up by European powers in what is known as the Scramble for Africa. The Berlin Conference of 1884–85 had divided the continent among European nations, without consulting the people who lived there. But in one place, the tide of history was about to shift. This is the story of the Battle of Adwa, where Ethiopia, under the leadership of Emperor Menelik II, struck a decisive blow against Italian colonial ambitions. More than just a battle, Adwa was a powerful symbol of anti-colonial resistance that inspired oppressed peoples across the world. The roots of the Battle of Adwa go back to 1889, when Emperor Menelik II signed the Treaty of Warsaw with Italy. The Italians, seeking to establish their control over Ethiopia, inserted a deceitful clause in the treaty. In the Amharic version, Ethiopia had the option to use Italy for foreign diplomacy, but in the Italian version, it forced Ethiopia to become an Italian protectorate. When Menelik discovered this deception, he rejected the treaty outright. Italy, determined to subdue Ethiopia, sent an invasion force from its colony in Eritrea. The Italian government, confident in its military superiority, underestimated Ethiopia. But Menelik had spent years modernizing his army, securing weapons from France, Russia, and Britain, and forging alliances with different Ethiopian factions. This was not a fragmented Africa, this was a united resistance against imperialism. On the Ethiopian side, Menelik II led a force of over 100,000 warriors, including infantry, cavalry, and skilled marksmen. His wife, Empress Taytu, led thousands of soldiers herself, proving that this was a national struggle, involving both men and women. The Italian force, under General Ores Baratieri, had around 17,000 troops, including Italian soldiers and local Eritrean Askari fighters. They were equipped with modern rifles and artillery but suffered from supply shortages and an overconfident leadership that underestimated Ethiopian strength. On the night of March 1, 1896, General Baratieri made a critical mistake. He divided his army into smaller units, hoping to surprise Menelik. But instead, the mountainous terrain and communication failures left the Italians scattered and vulnerable. Menelik's forces struck at dawn, launching a well-coordinated counteroffensive. Taytu's forces targeted the Italian flank, while Ethiopian troops encircled the enemy. Fighting raged for hours. The Italians, outnumbered and overwhelmed, began to collapse. By midday, thousands of Italian and Eritrean troops lay dead or captured. The Ethiopian victory was absolute. The Battle of Adwa was the first time an African nation decisively defeated a European colonial power. Italy was humiliated and forced to recognize Ethiopia's sovereignty in the Treaty of Addis Ababa. More importantly, Adwa shattered the racist myth of European invincibility. For oppressed people worldwide, especially in Africa and the African diaspora, Adwa was a beacon of hope. It showed that imperialism could be resisted, that colonial conquest was not inevitable. From Kwame Nkrumah to Haile Selassie, the memory of Adwa fueled struggles for liberation. Ethiopia remained a symbol of African pride and resistance, proving that self-determination was possible. The Battle of Adwa was not just a national victory but a triumph of the oppressed against the forces of imperialism. The colonial system functioned as an extension of capitalist exploitation, where African labor and resources were forcibly extracted to benefit European industrial powers. Adwa proved that colonial rule was not an unchangeable structure, it could be overthrown through collective struggle. It was a case where the subjugated class, the Ethiopian peasantry, nobility, and warriors, united against the external bourgeois colonial force. Menelik's resistance demonstrated that African nations could modernize and defend themselves without becoming dependent on imperial powers. However, the victory also highlighted the contradictions within Ethiopia's own class structure, as later Ethiopian rulers would face internal struggles between feudal elites and the working masses. The Battle of Adwa was more than a military confrontation, it was a defining moment in world history. It changed the trajectory of African resistance, inspired anti-colonial movements, and sent a powerful message that no empire, no matter how powerful, is invincible when people unite against oppression. Today, as we witness new forms of economic and political domination, the legacy of Adwa reminds us of the power of resistance, unity, and self-determination. Thank you for watching. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Untold Africa for more historical deep dives.